Ricardo lay in the sterile confines of his hospital room, the pale light filtering through the blinds, casting stripes across his frail body. The once magnificent figure of a millionaire now seemed a shadow, reduced to a mere outline of the man he once was. He stared at the ceiling, his mind drifting through a haze of memories, extravagant parties, the laughter of his children echoing in opulent rooms, and the warmth of family gatherings that felt like a lifetime ago. Each recollection was a bittersweet reminder of what he had lost, and as the weight of regret settled heavily on his chest, his heart ached for the love and connection he had taken for granted. The door creaked open, and Nurse Camila stepped inside. Her presence was a burst of warmth in the cold, clinical environment. With her bright smile and kind eyes, she stood in stark contrast to the sterile white walls and the faint smell of antiseptic. Camila had a natural ability to brighten the bleakest of days, and she sensed the heaviness that clung to Ricardo like a shroud. As she adjusted the foredrip and checked his vitals, the silence between them grew comfortable, yet it was tinged with an unspoken understanding. "Good morning, Mr. Almeida," she said softly, her voice a gentle melody. "How are you feeling today?" Ricardo turned his head slightly, his lips forming a faint smile that barely reached his eyes. "As good as I can, I suppose," he replied, his voice hoarse and strained. "But it's hard to find solace in these four walls." Camila nodded, her brow furrowing in empathy. "It can be tough, but you have people who care about you. Don't forget that." His gaze drifted back to the ceiling, and the smile vanished. "Caring is a luxury I can no longer afford, my dear. The world I once knew, it seems so distant now." There was a tremor in his voice, a vulnerability that caught Camila off guard. After a moment of silence, Ricardo continued, his words laced with desperation. "I have a request, Camila, something that may seem strange, but I need to feel that connection again, even if just for a day." Camila's heart raced with curiosity. "What do you mean?" "I want you to pretend to be my daughter," he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Just for a day. I miss the feeling of family, of love. I want to hear someone call me Dad again, even if it's not true." Camila hesitated, taken aback by the weight of his request. "But I'm not—" "I know," he interrupted gently, "but you are kind, and I can see the goodness in you. You would be doing me a tremendous favor. I can offer you a reward, a substantial one." The mention of money lingered in the air, but it was the look in his eyes that tugged at her heartstrings. She could see the desperation etched on his face, a man clinging to the last threads of his humanity. The thought of bringing even a fleeting moment of joy to him was tempting. "Please," he implored, his voice breaking, "just think of it as a small act of kindness. For one day, let me feel loved again." Camila's resolve began to waver. She could feel the weight of his sorrow pressing upon her, and the idea of providing him a shred of happiness was hard to resist. "All right," she finally said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "I'll do it, just for one day." Ricardo's face lit up, the pallor of illness momentarily lifted by a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, Camila. You have no idea what this means to me." As their eyes met, an unspoken agreement passed between them, binding her to a role that promised to be both a comfort and a deception. Little did she know, this simple act of compassion would soon entangle her in a web of secrets, greed, and a truth darker than she could ever imagine. The stage was set for a day that would change everything, a day steeped in the complexities of human relationships and the shadows that lurked behind them. The sterile scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the air as Camila leaned against the wall outside Ricardo's hospital room, her mind racing. The request he had made weighed on her heart, a mix of compassion and curiosity swirling within. She had only known the millionaire as a frail shadow of the man he once was, but there was something about his vulnerability that tugged at her. After a long moment of contemplation, she inhaled deeply, willing herself to step into the role he had so desperately asked her to play. "Okay, I'll do it," she finally said, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. "Just for today." Inside the room, the atmosphere shifted as she entered. Ricardo's eyes lit up, a flicker of joy in the depths of his fatigue. "Thank you, Camila. You have no idea how much this means to me, he said, his voice trembling with emotion. They spent the day weaving stories of family vacations and laughter, each memory adding a thread to the fabric of their invented relationship. Camila found herself laughing at Ricardo's tales of extravagant trips to Europe and summers spent sailing on his yacht. I can't believe you did that. A private island? She exclaimed, her eyes wide with amusement. Ah, it was one of the best summers of my life, he reminisced, a wistful smile gracing his lips. I wish I could relive it, just once. Family should be more than just a word, you know? It should be filled with love, noise, and memories. In that moment, Camila understood the depth of his loneliness. She played the role of the daughter with an earnestness she didn't know she possessed, feeling the warmth of familial love seep into the sterile room. It was a brief respite from the reality of their circumstances, a moment where the lines between truth and pretense blurred delightfully. But just as the atmosphere became light and familial, the door swung open with a sharp creak, causing both of them to jump. Evelyn, Ricardo's wife, stood in the doorway, her sharp gaze cutting through the warmth like ice. "What's going on here?" she demanded, her voice measured but laced with suspicion. Camila's heart raced as she exchanged glances with Ricardo. The joy of their earlier conversation evaporated, replaced by an uncomfortable tension. "Evelyn, this is," Ricardo began, but his words faltered as he struggled to maintain the facade. "Who is she, Ricardo?" Evelyn's brow furrowed, her voice rising slightly. "Why is there a stranger in your room?" This is my daughter," Ricardo stammered, the lie tasting bitter on his tongue. Camila could see the strain etched across his pale face. It was a fragile web they were spinning, and one wrong move could unravel everything. Evelyn's gaze flickered between them, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Your daughter?" She crossed her arms, her posture defensive. "I wasn't aware you had a daughter. Where has she been all this time?" Camila felt a rush of heat rise to her cheeks, her mind racing for a plausible explanation. "I've been away at school abroad," she blurted. "Just came back to visit." Evelyn scrutinized her, the tension palpable. "I see," she said slowly, her voice dripping with skepticism. "And what exactly are you doing here, Camila?" Before Camila could respond, the door swung open again, this time revealing Mr. Thompson, the lawyer, who entered with a briefcase clutched tightly in his hand. The air thickened with an ominous energy as he glanced around the room, his expression unreadable. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need to discuss some important matters," he said, his tone clipped. The briefcase seemed to hold secrets, heavy with the weight of pending decisions. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, and she turned to Ricardo. "What is he doing here?" she demanded, her voice tinged with irritation. "I thought we agreed to handle this ourselves." Ricardo's face paled further, and he looked at Camila, his expression pleading. Camila felt as though she were suspended in a moment of uncertainty, the air crackling with tension. She had stepped into a role meant to bring comfort, but now it felt like the ground beneath her was shifting, and she was caught in a web of lies that threatened to entangle them all. Evelyn entered the room with an elegance that was undermined by the chill radiating from her icy demeanor. The moment her eyes landed on Camila, who sat at Ricardo's bedside, the air thickened with unspoken hostility. Her brows furrowed, and a sharp gaze pierced through the remnants of warmth that had enveloped the room moments earlier. "What's going on here?" Evelyn's voice dripped with suspicion as she crossed her arms, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping rhythmically against her elbow. It was a question laced with accusation, and Ricardo faltered, his frail body shrinking deeper into the hospital bed as if trying to hide from the confrontation. "Evelyn, this is," Ricardo stammered, struggling to find the right words. "This is my daughter, Camila. She's here to keep me company." The declaration felt awkward, the words clumsy on his tongue, as he glanced at Camila for support. He hoped she would play along, but the tension in the room was palpable, and he could sense the shadows of doubt creeping into Evelyn's mind. "Your daughter? I wasn't aware you had a daughter, Ricardo." Evelyn's tone was condescending, her skepticism evident. And what kind of daughter comes to visit her father in the hospital without even a prior introduction? Her eyes narrowed, scrutinizing Camila with an intensity that made the nurse's heart race. Camila swallowed hard, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a family drama far beyond her comprehension. She sat up straighter, mustering all her courage. "I know this may seem surprising, Mrs. D'Souza. I understand your concern, but I wanted to be here for him. He shared so much about our family." Her voice was steady, though inside, anxiety churned. Evelyn's smirk was devoid of warmth. "Family? Is that what you call it? You're just a stranger playing house in my husband's bed." Her words sliced through the air, sharp and accusatory, leaving Camila momentarily speechless. Before Camila could respond, the door creaked open, and a tall man in a well-tailored suit stepped in, carrying a briefcase that seemed to weigh down the atmosphere even further. "Mr. D'Souza, I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, his voice low but commanding. It was Mr. Thompson, the lawyer who had been managing Ricardo's affairs. "Not at all, Thompson," Ricardo replied, his voice barely above a whisper, yet filled with an uncharacteristic urgency. "I was just good, because we need to discuss some pressing matters," Thompson interjected, his gaze shifting between Evelyn and Camila, assessing the situation. The briefcase clicked open, revealing stacks of documents that seemed to carry the weight of Ricardo's fortune and the secrets entwined within it. "Pressing matters?" Evelyn echoed, her voice rising in indignation as she turned her sharp gaze on Thompson. "What could possibly be more pressing than the fact that my husband is being duped by this nurse?" "Evelyn, please," Ricardo said, a tremor in his voice as the tension escalated. "This isn't what it seems." "Oh, really? Then enlighten me, Ricardo. What is it?" Evelyn's sarcasm dripped like venom. Thompson cleared his throat, trying to mediate the brewing storm. "What I have here concerns the distribution of your estate. There are implications that we need to address immediately." His tone turned grave, the atmosphere thickening even further as he pulled out a document labeled "Last Will and Testament." "What implications?" Evelyn demanded, her eyes narrowing to slits, anger radiating off her in waves. Ricardo shifted uncomfortably, his frail frame seeming to shrink further as he grappled with the dual pressures of Evelyn's incredulity and Thompson's professional demeanor. "It's about my health, Evelyn. I need you to listen." "Listen to what? To your little fantasy?" Evelyn shot back, her voice sharp as a knife. "You think this charade will change anything? You're still sick, and I have a right to know what's happening in my own home." In that moment, the stakes had been raised, and Camila felt the weight of the room pressing down on her. She glanced at Ricardo, whose eyes were filled with a mix of regret and desperation. The facade they had built was crumbling, and Camila could sense the impending chaos that would ensue. "Everyone, please. Let's just calm down," she pleaded, raising her hands slightly in an attempt to quell the tension. But her voice trembled under the weight of Evelyn's fury and Thompson's serious demeanor. Evelyn's eyes darted between Ricardo and Camila, calculating, and Camila knew she was now ensnared in a web of deceit far darker than she had anticipated. The room felt like a pressure cooker, ready to explode, and for the first time, she questioned the wisdom of her decision to step into this perilous dance of lies. Evelyn's voice sliced through the fragile atmosphere in the hospital room, sharp and unyielding. "What in the world is she doing here, Ricardo?" Her eyes, cold and accusatory, zeroed in on Camila, who stood frozen, the weight of the situation crashing down upon her. Camila had only hoped to bring a fleeting moment of joy to Ricardo, but now she felt as if she were standing on a precipice, with the ground crumbling beneath her feet. Ricardo's frail form tensed under the scrutiny of his wife. "Evelyn, please," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "This is my daughter." "Your daughter?" Evelyn interrupted, her tone dripping with disbelief. "You expect me to believe that this nurse is your daughter? You've never mentioned her before, and I've been here, watching over you like I always do." Her glare bore into Camila, a mix of disdain and suspicion. Mr. Thompson, the lawyer, sensed the rising tension and stepped forward, attempting to defuse the situation. "Evelyn, perhaps we should all take a moment to calm down. Ricardo has had a difficult time, and difficult?" Evelyn snapped, cutting him off. He's been lying to me about everything. And now, he's playing house with a stranger? She crossed her arms, her posture radiating hostility. What's really going on here, Ricardo? As the air thickened with tension, Camila felt her heart race. She had entered this scenario with the intention of providing comfort, but now she was entangled in a web of accusations and deceit that threatened to suffocate her. Her mind raced as she overheard snippets of conversation, words like inheritance and scheme, drifting into her consciousness, hinting at a darker reality lurking beneath the surface. Evelyn, Ricardo faltered, his pallor deepening as he struggled to maintain the facade. I just wanted to feel some semblance of family again, even if just for a moment. His voice cracked, revealing the vulnerability that lay beneath his previously composed exterior. Family? Evelyn's laughter was harsh, devoid of warmth. You think this woman can replace the daughter you abandoned? You're delusional, Ricardo. She turned to Camila, her gaze now icy. And you? What's your angle? Are you hoping to get your hands on his money? Evelyn, stop! Ricardo shouted, the desperation in his voice echoing off the sterile walls. She wasn't trying to deceive anyone. She was just what? Playing a part in your little charade? Evelyn retorted, her voice rising in indignation. I know what you're doing, and I won't let you ruin everything we've built because of some twisted fantasy. You're sick, and I've been here, standing by your side. You owe me this, Ricardo. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, attempting to regain control of the conversation. If I may interject, he said, his voice steady but tinged with concern, I believe it's important to address the legal implications of this situation. He opened his briefcase, revealing a stack of documents that seemed to loom ominously in the air. These papers outline the estate and the decisions that need to be made. If the truth comes to light, it could jeopardize everything for both you, Ricardo, and for Camila. Camila's stomach dropped at the mention of her name. She could feel the walls closing in around her, the weight of the circumstances pressing down harder with each passing moment. She had stepped into this role with the hope of bringing solace to a dying man, but now she was ensnared in a dangerous game. She took a cautious step back, her instincts screaming at her to escape this volatile situation. Camila, Ricardo attempted to reach out to her, his expression a mix of regret and concern. I never meant for you to get involved in this. But here I am, she replied, her voice trembling slightly as she fought to maintain her composure. And it sounds like I'm in deeper than I ever wanted to be. The reality of her vulnerability hit her hard, and she could feel the tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, a predatory glint appearing as she observed Camila's distress. You should be careful, dear. People like me don't take kindly to threats to their investments. Her tone dripped with malice, and Camila knew instinctively that she was being marked as a target in this twisted family drama. Ricardo's labored breathing filled the silence, and Camila's heart ached for him. He was caught between the woman he had once loved and the fragile fantasy he had created. The tension in the room was palpable, and Camila felt an urgent need to escape before the truth of this charade came crashing down, leaving devastation in its wake. In the dim light of the hospital room, tension hung thick in the air, mingling with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the distant beeping of machines. Ricardo lay in his bed, frail and pale, his breath shallow and labored. Camila stood beside him, her heart racing as she sensed the gravity of the moment. The earlier warmth of their shared memories had evaporated, replaced by a chilling reality. Camila, Ricardo murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean for it to come to this. I just wanted a moment of peace, a taste of family. His eyes, once filled with hope, now mirrored despair. Camila shifted uncomfortably, guilt gnawing at her insides. She had agreed to this charade out of compassion, but now, standing on the precipice of unraveling family secrets, she felt the weight of her decision pressing down on her. I understand, Ricardo, but we need to be careful. Your wife, she seems suspicious. Ricardo closed his eyes, his brow furrowed with worry. Evelyn has always been driven by money, by status. I fear she'll do anything to protect her interests now that I'm vulnerable." Just as he spoke, the doors swung open violently, and Evelyn stormed in, her presence commanding and her expression fierce. "What is going on here?" she demanded, her sharp gaze darting between Ricardo and Camila. "Evelyn, please," Ricardo implored, his voice trembling. "This is Camila, my daughter. We were just—" "Your daughter?" Evelyn interrupted, her voice rising incredulously. "Since when do you have a daughter? You never mentioned her once." Camila felt a flush of heat rise to her cheeks, but she steeled herself against Evelyn's scrutiny. "I'm here to support my father," she said, her voice steady despite the anxiety coursing through her veins. Evelyn's eyes narrowed, and she stepped closer, her body language radiating hostility. "You expect me to believe this? You're just some nurse looking for a payday, aren't you?" Before Camila could respond, the door creaked open again, and Mr. Thompson, the lawyer, entered, his briefcase clutched tightly in his hand. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said, his tone cool and professional, though Camila could sense a tension in his posture. "No, but perhaps you can shed some light on this charade," Evelyn snapped, gesturing toward Camila. "What do you know about her?" Mr. Thompson adjusted his glasses, glancing between them with an expression of mild concern. "I'm here to discuss the estate, Evelyn. I suggest we focus on the matters at hand rather than personal grievances." Ricardo shifted in his bed, visibly agitated. "What about my will, Thompson? I need to know I can trust you." Evelyn scoffed, crossing her arms. "Trust? In this room? You think this nurse is really here for you? She's only here for what she can get." "Enough." Ricardo's voice rose, surprising everyone. "I invited her here, and I want her here. Camila, you deserve to be part of this conversation." Camila's heart raced as the spotlight turned to her. She could feel the weight of their accusations pressing down, a mixture of fear and determination bubbling within. "I may not be your daughter, but I came here to help," she said firmly. "But if there's something you're hiding, Evelyn, I won't stand by and let it happen." The atmosphere crackled with tension as Evelyn's expression shifted from hostility to something darker, a flicker of fear crossing her face before she masked it with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about, little girl. This is between my husband and me." Camila's resolve hardened. She had to know the truth. "And if it's something that could hurt him, I won't let you manipulate him any longer." As the accusations swirled, Camila felt a surge of urgency. She needed to uncover Evelyn's true motives. She had glimpsed the shadows of greed and deception in the woman's eyes and knew there was more lurking beneath the surface. After a charged silence, Evelyn turned to Mr. Thompson, her voice low and venomous. "You know what to do. We can't let this get out of hand." Camila's mind raced as the pieces began to fall into place. She had to act quickly, to dig deeper into Evelyn's past, to uncover the truth before it was too late. The stakes had never been higher, and she was determined to protect Ricardo from the clutches of deceit that surrounded him, even if it meant risking everything. Camila took a deep breath as she entered Ricardo's hospital room, her heart pounding with a mixture of determination and anxiety. She had spent countless hours piecing together the threads of Evelyn's deceit, each revelation fueling her resolve. Today, she would confront the woman who had manipulated Ricardo's life for her gain, and she knew she had to be careful. The tension hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. Evelyn sat in the corner, her polished nails tapping rhythmically against the fabric of her designer handbag. The moment Camila stepped inside, her sharp eyes flicked up, scrutinizing the nurse with a predatory gaze. "What do you want?" she snapped, her voice dripping with condescension. Camila squared her shoulders, summoning her courage. "I have something important to discuss with you, Evelyn. It's about Ricardo." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on her lips. "Oh, is that so? What could you possibly have to say about my husband that I don't already know?" "Everything you think you know is a lie," Camila replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil within her. "I found out about your manipulations, your schemes to control his estate and take advantage of his illness." Evelyn's expression darkened, and she leaned forward, her tone icy. "You have no idea what you're talking about. Ricardo needs me. I've been his rock through this entire ordeal. What have you done besides play dress-up as his daughter?" Camila felt a surge of anger, but pushed it aside. "You've been nothing but a leech, Evelyn. I know about the financial troubles you've hidden from him, the way you've siphoned money from his accounts while pretending to care for him." "Proof?" Evelyn laughed, a sound devoid of any real amusement. "You think you can just waltz in here with accusations and expect me to crumble? You're nothing but a nurse playing a part." Before Camila could respond, a weak voice broke through the tension. "Camila?" Ricardo struggled to sit up, his face pale but determined. "What's going on?" Camila turned to him, her heart aching at the sight of his frail body. "Ricardo, I'm exposing the truth. Evelyn has been deceiving you." "Deceiving me?" Ricardo glanced between the two women, confusion etched on his face. "What do you mean?" "Your wife. She's been manipulating you, using your illness to her advantage." Camila pressed on, her resolve solidifying as she met Ricardo's gaze. "I found documents that show she's been planning to take control of your estate, leaving you with nothing. You deserve to know the truth." Evelyn's face twisted in rage. "You're crossing a line, Camila. You think you can come in here and ruin everything I've worked for? You won't get away with this." Ricardo's brow furrowed, the realization dawning on him. "Is it true, Evelyn? Have you really been lying to me?" "I did what I had to do to protect our life together." Evelyn spat, her veneer of calm cracking. "You were too weak to see what was happening around you. I am the one who stood by you, not her." "Stood by me?" Ricardo's voice rose, filled with disbelief. "You've been taking advantage of my vulnerability. Camila has treated me with respect and compassion, things I haven't received from you in years." At that moment, the sound of sirens echoed outside the hospital, growing louder with each passing second. Camila had called the police, armed with the evidence she had collected about Evelyn's fraudulent activities. "They're here to help you, Ricardo," she said softly, her heart racing. "You're not alone anymore." Evelyn's face paled as the realization hit her, and she turned to Ricardo, desperation in her eyes. "You don't believe her, do you? This is all a misunderstanding." But Ricardo's expression had hardened. "I see clearly now, Evelyn. It's over. I won't let you manipulate me any longer." As the police entered the room, Camila felt a wave of relief wash over her. The officers began to question Evelyn, their expressions stern as they reviewed the documents she had uncovered. Ricardo watched, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and liberation. "Thank you for standing up for me," he said to Camila, a tear slipping down his cheek. "You've given me a chance to reclaim my life." Camila smiled through her own tears, realizing that in this tumultuous storm, she had not only uncovered the truth, but had also found a sense of family she had never expected. The weight of deceit was lifting, and with it, a new chapter awaited her, one filled with honesty, strength, and the promise of a brighter future.